Welcome, and here we are again, ready to celebrate the spring festival of Passover, Pesach. It has many names. One of the names is Chag HaMatzot, the holiday of matzah. Chag HaAviv, the spring holiday. Zaman Cherutenu, the time of our freedom. And Chag HaPesach, the Passover celebration. The Seder that we traditionally conduct on the first and second night of the holiday has 15 steps. And the word Seder comes from the Hebrew root meaning order. There is a special order to this house or home ceremony. The Seder has 15 steps, and I will take you through a couple of them this evening as we join together as best we can during this year of challenges, the COVID challenges this year. But I'm happy to be able to present this Seder to you this evening. We have a Seder plate, and on the Seder plate we have our symbols. We have the karpas. Let me see where that is. The karpas is the green vegetables, usually parsley. Karpas is a green vegetable that symbolizes the spring and represents the themes of rebirth and rejuvenation. Maror, the bitter herbs, usually is horseradish, and this represents the bitterness, the taste of bitter, which is the lacking of freedom. The charoset, over here, is a mixture of walnuts and cinnamon and wine. It's a mixture that we put together. Many times we use it as a side dish that is representing the mortar or the bricks that the Jewish slaves had to make in building Pharaoh's cities. Zeroah, over here, is the shank bone. And this represents the Passover sacrifice that was offered in the temple. The word zeroah also means the forearm, and the forearm is mentioned in the Haggadah as God took us out with an outstretched arm, zeroah, netuyah, and so it's the shank bone. Beitzah, or the roasted egg, also is a symbol of the temple sacrifice, and it is a universal symbol for spring and renewal and rebirth. So those are our symbols. We have a Seder plate that we put all of these symbols on, and we refer to them as we go through the Seder. If you have the Haggadah that I prepared for you, we're going to start on page 2, and we always start our holidays and Shabbat with the Kiddush. We have 4 cups of wine that we drink during the Seder, and they represent 4 statements that God made in order to take us out of Egypt. So page number 2, follow along with me on the top. Fill your cup with wine or grape juice. This is the first of 4 cups we'll enjoy at tonight's Seder. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who creates the fruit of the vine. If you'd like to read with me, please do. Blessed are you, God, our God, King of the universe, who has chosen us from among all peoples, and raised us above all tongues, and made us holy through his commandments. And you, God, our God, have given us in love festivals for happiness, feasts and festive seasons for rejoicing the day of this feast of Matzot, and this festival of holy convocation. The season of our freedom, a holy convocation, commemorating the departure from Egypt. For you have chosen us and sanctified us from all the nations, and you have given us as a heritage your holy festivals, in happiness and joy. Blessed are you, God, who sanctifies Israel and the festive seasons. And when we approach a new holiday or some new event, we always include the Shehechianu prayer, which follows. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has granted us life, sustained us, and enabled us to reach this occasion. Very special occasion when we are able to get together once again. Turn to page 3, the next page. So Kadesh or Kiddush is the first step, the first out of 15 steps that makes up our Seder. Urchatz is step number 2, and it's washing of our hands. So if you have a bowl or a glass of water that you'd like to wash your hands, we do this because we're going to touch food, but we do not say a blessing over this washing of hands. We eat karpas, a fresh taste of newfound freedom, a product of the spring. Yet we mix it with salt water, memories of bitterness and tears. So this is a first dipping that we do during the Seder. We have 2 dippings, and this is part of the 4 questions that we'll ask shortly. Why do we dip twice? And so the parsley is dipped in the salt water, as I just mentioned. It's a combination of bitter and sweet. The bitterness of the salt water represents the tears of the slaves, and the spring, the parsley, is the new growth, the rebirth, the hope for the future. And so we take the karpas, if you have some now, and pass around the salt water. We dip it and we eat it, and this is the blessing under the karpas, the appetizer. If you'd like to join with me, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pri ha'adamah. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who creates the fruit of the earth. And we eat the parsley, which was dipped in the salt water. Now we get to step number 3. The first 5 steps go pretty quickly. Then it takes a little bit longer to get through the other steps. So Yachatz is the 3rd step, and this is where we break the middle matzah. You take the middle matzahs. You should have matzah on the table. I'll give you a chance to locate the matzah, and there's one that you take. You break it in half. You take the larger piece of matzah and wrap it in a napkin or a cloth, and you put it on the side to be the afikomen, or the dessert, at the end of the meal. So I will give you a minute to do that if you'd like to break the middle of the matzah and hide or wrap it in a napkin and put it on the side. And we turn to page 4, and the next part of the Seder, we did Kadesh or Chatz, Karpas Yachatz, and now we're into number 5, Magid, and this is the longest of all of the sections in the Haggadah. Magid means to retell. We begin to tell the story. So you set the Seder plate aside, you fill your 2nd cup of grape juice or wine, and you begin to tell the story. So we turn to page 5 of our Haggadah. Magid begins with an invitation to all who are hungry, physically, spiritually, emotionally. Let all come together on this night and experience freedom. So we look at the matzah on the table. We either lift the plate or we point to it, and we say together, "This is the bread of affliction that our fathers ate in the land of Egypt. Whoever is hungry, let him come and eat. Whoever is in need, let him come and conduct the Seder of Passover. This year we are here, next year in the land of Israel. This year we are slaves. Next year we will be free people. And now we have a chance to ask the 4 questions. There are a variety of 4s. We have the 4 cups of wine. And now we have 4 questions that we ask. So if you turn to page 6, this was traditionally granted to the youngest child at the Seder table. It could be asked by anybody, young at heart. And so this is the traditional tune. Follow along on page 6. Ma nishtana halayla hazeh mikol haleilot, mikol haleilot, shebechol haleilot anu ochlim chametz umatzah, chametz umatzah. Halayla hazeh, kulo matzah. Halayla hazeh, kulo matzah. Shebechol haleilot anu ochlim she'ar yirakot, she'ar yirakot. Halayla hazeh, maror, maror. Shebechol haleilot anu ochlim ben yoshvin uven misubin, ben yoshvin uven misubin. Halayla hazeh, kulanu misubin. Shebechol haleilot ein anu matbilin, afilu pa'am echad, afilu pa'am echad. Halayla hazeh, shetei amin. What makes this night different from all other nights? On all other nights, we need not dip even once. On this night, we do twice. On all other nights, we eat bread or matzah, and on this night, only matzah. On all other nights, we eat any kind of vegetables, and on this night, we eat maror, bitter herbs. On all other nights, we are sitting upright or reclining, and on this night, we all recline. Why do we recline? We put pillows on our chairs and kind of lean and relax. That's a symbol of people who are free. Slaves don't have the luxury of sitting leisurely and eating their food or reclining in ease and relaxation. This is to show that we are free and that we are taking our time. We have all the time in the world. On the bottom of page 6, if you'd like to read with me, the power of questions, because we just had 4, and we should have loads and loads of questions throughout the meal. Isidore I. Rabi, the Nobel laureate in physics, was once asked, "Why did you become a scientist rather than a doctor or lawyer or businessman like the other immigrant kids in your neighborhood?" "My mother made me a scientist without ever intending it." Every other Jewish mother in Brooklyn would ask her child after school, "Nu, did you learn anything today?" But not my mother. She always asked me a different question. "Izzy," she would say, "did you ask a good question today?" That difference, asking good questions, made me become a scientist. We will turn to page number 8. And here is another example of the number 4. So we have 4 cups of wine, 4 questions, and now we have 4 children, or the 4 different people that come to our Seder. It's a different approach, different experiences, but we treat them differently, or we teach them differently. So on page 8, if you'd like to read with me, please do. The number 4 is very significant in the Passover Seder. The holiday of Passover has 4 names. Here's another 4. Chag HaPesach, the holiday of passing over, when the angel of death passed over during the 10th plague, which alludes to God's passing over the homes of the Israelites when smiting the Egyptians with plagues. Chag HaAviv, the holiday of spring, symbolizing renewal and rebirth. Chag HaMatzot, the holiday of matzah, and all of its rich significance. And Chag HaCherut, the holiday of freedom and redemption. We drink 4 cups of wine during the Seder as well. Each cup corresponds to a verb in the Exodus story describing redemption. Vahotzeti, Vehitzalti, Viga'alti, Vilakachti. The process of redemption is a 4-step process. Being brought out of slavery, physically, being saved from slavery, emotionally and mentally, and being redeemed as an individual and re-attaining personal freedom, and being brought to a new place, a place of new potential. And now we read about the 4 children. What do they represent? One idea is that they represent different aspects of one individual when confronted with this holiday, or even with Judaism in general. There is a part of each of us that is knowledgeable about what is occurring and that is curious and excited to learn more. There is a part of each of us that in some way sometimes feels like we want to dismiss all of this nonsense, that wants to separate ourselves from it. There is a part of each of us that approaches this with wide eyes, overwhelmed by all that is occurring around us. And then there's a part of us that feels ignorant about our own religion, so ignorant that we do not even know how to talk about it or ask about it, or where to begin to approach it. The 4 children represent each complex individual sitting at the Seder. The wise one, what does he say? What are the testimonies, the statutes, and the laws which the Lord our God has commanded you? You in turn shall instruct him in the laws of Passover, up to one is not to eat any dessert after the Passover lamb. The wicked one, what does he say? What is this service to you? He says to you, but not to him. By thus excluding himself from the community, he has denied that which is fundamental. You, therefore, blunt his teeth and say to him, it is because of this that the Lord did for me when I left Egypt. For me, but not for him. If he had been there, he would not have been redeemed. The simpleton, what does he say? What is this? Thus you shall say to him, with a strong hand, and the Lord took us out of Egypt from the house of slaves. And for the one who does not know how to ask, you must initiate, as it is said, you shall tell your child on that day, it is because of this that the Lord did for me when I left Egypt. Page number 9, we continue in the story, and in order to convince the Pharaoh that God is supreme and to make it so that he had no choice but to let the Jewish people go, there were 10 plagues that were brought upon Egypt, the Pharaoh, and all of his people. And so when we have our cup of wine, the tradition is every time we state one of the plagues, we take a drop of wine out to show that we indeed feel sorry and remorse for the suffering that the Egyptians suffered under these plagues, and that our cup of joy should be diminished at least by 10 drops. And so we say the plagues. The first plague, blood. The second plague, frogs. The next plague, lice. Followed by wild animals. And you could be saying this and taking a drop of wine after each of these plagues. Cattle plague. Boils. Hail. Locusts. Darkness. And the ultimate plague that convinced Pharaoh to let everyone go, the slaying of the firstborn. Page 10. As the Israelites are able to leave Egypt, there are so many things that God did for us. And the song Dayenu means enough. If God just took us out of Egypt, it would have been enough. But we see that God kept helping us, rewarding us. And after each verse we say, Dayenu, it would have been enough. But God, in God's graciousness and mercy and love, kept bringing us further and further out of Egypt and towards the promised land, giving us the Torah, giving us Shabbat, and we are thankful for each and every blessing that God gave to us. So on page 10, I think everyone is familiar with this song, Dayenu, enough. Elo hotzi hotzianu mi Mitzrayim, hotzianu mi Mitzrayim, Dayenu. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. The bottom of page 10 in English. Let's do this together. If God had only taken us out of Egypt and hadn't done it so miraculously, it would have been enough. If God had only split the Red Sea and hadn't given us the Torah, it would have been enough. If God had only given us the Torah and hadn't brought us into the land of Israel, it would have been enough. Dayenu. But in all of those beautiful gifts, we acknowledge with grateful thanks that God gave all of these things to us. Page number 11. As the leader of the Seder, it's incumbent upon that person to make sure that they mention three main symbols. And under the picture, these are the three symbols that I need to explain to you. Rabban Gamliel used to say, whoever does not say these three things on Passover has not fulfilled their obligation. And these are Pesach, Matzah, Maror. Now, Pesach, you know, means to pass over, but it also is the sacrifice, the lamb sacrifice that the Jewish people slaughtered. And you know, they took the blood of the lamb, and what did they do? That's right, they put it on the doorposts of their house, so that the angel of death would acknowledge this as a house where Jewish people resided, and that would pass over. But Pesach is the sacrifice, the lamb sacrifice. Matzah, you know, and maror, we said before, the bitter herbs. This actually was the menu for the first Seder. It wasn't really a Seder, it was their last meal before they left Egypt. So they had the lamb mixed with the matzah and the bitter herbs. Now, what's the meaning for these three symbols? Pesach. It is because God passed over our ancestors' houses in Egypt and the lamb sacrifice. Matzah. It is because our ancestors were redeemed from Egypt. The matzah was the symbol of haste also. The dough did not rise in time, and so they had to eat these flat crackers. Maror It is because the Egyptians embittered our ancestors' lives in Egypt. The taste of the bitterness reminds us of how bitter life was under the cruel Pharaoh and the taskmasters. Page number 12. At this point, we are ready for the second cup of wine in the middle of the page. It's the same blessing. And if you have your grape juice or wine ready and you fill or replenish your cup, now's the time to do it. This brings us to the end of the Magid section, the retelling of the story. We now say the blessing over the drink of the second cup of wine while reclining. So if you'd like to lean and relax, now's a good time to do that. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. L'chaim. Blessed are you, Lord our God, sovereign of the universe, who creates the fruit of the vine. Now we come to the next section of the 15 steps on page 13, and it's called Rachza. It means hand washing, and this time we actually say a blessing. So if you have a bowl of water, a cup of water with a bowl, and you many times you pass it around the table, you just kind of rinse your hands very gingerly, because we're ready to begin our festive meal. But we have a number of steps before that. So Rachza on page number 13. I'll read from the top. We prepare ourselves to eat matzah by again washing our hands. Pour some water over your right hand 3 times and then on your left hand 3 times. This is tradition. You can go back and forth. It's not the way we're instructed during this year to really 20 seconds soap and water. No, this is not it. It's just a symbolic washing or cleansing your hands. Say the appropriate blessing and dry your hands. And the blessing is, blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with your commandments and commanded us concerning the washing of hands. Now, there's a tradition that you don't speak in between, but I am using this as an instructional Seder, so I will be talking you through this. What we do now is hamotzi, and you know the hamotzi is the blessing for bread. But our bread during this week is the matzah. So thank God for bread. Raise the 3 matzahs together, the top one, the broken middle one, and the bottom one, and say the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. But we also have a special blessing that goes along with this, because matzah is one of those 3 special symbols that I spoke about just before. We have a special blessing for the matzah, and that comes afterwards, and it goes like this. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al achilat matzah. And the translation, blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us concerning the eating of matzah. And so now is your chance to eat a morsel. This should be the first taste of matzah that you have for the Passover season. And the second of the 3 important symbols is the maror. And now we're going to dip the maror and put it together with the charoset. And again, we have sweet and bitter mixed in. We don't want a completely bitter life, and we know for sure that life is not always joyful. So we want to mix it and balance it and hope that we have a little bit of each so we can appreciate the other. At the bottom of page 13 is the blessing for the maror, or the bitter herbs, and a little bit of charoset. You could put it on your matzah if you'd like. And the blessing is, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, al achilat maror. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us concerning the eating of maror. And so we make a sandwich. We take 2 pieces of matzah, we put the maror and the charoset together, and we remember Hillel, Rabbi Hillel, who is given credit for coming up with this idea. On the top of page 14, this is called korech. This is one of the 15 steps of the Seder. Make a maror and charoset sandwich. This is a custom that Hillel, a famous rabbi in the Talmud, used to do in order to fuse together the various foods and their symbols. We bring the bitter and the sweet together, and the food of freedom together with the food of slavery. Remember, the freedom and the slavery come together. Realizing how closely linked they are. Grateful that our lives are sweet and free. Let's recite together. Thus did Hillel do at the time of the temple. He would combine matzah and maror and eat them together, as it is said, they shall eat it with matzah and bitter herbs. And the next step in the 15 steps is the one that everyone is anxious for. It's called Shulchan Orech. The table is set, the festive meal. It is a custom of some to begin the meal with eating an egg on the Seder plate, dipped in salt water. The egg symbolizes the cycle of life. Now, finally, it's time to eat. Enjoy your meal. Now, before I leave you, and you have a festive meal coming up, I hope, and I hope it's tasty and you all enjoy, and you could thank your hosts for preparing that and keeping you in mind. I just want to outline the other elements of the Seder that I will not go through because I'm going to leave you shortly so that you can enjoy your meal. But you have the Haggadah in front of you, and if you so choose, you can go through the remaining parts of the Seder together on your own. So on page 14, after the meal is complete, we have the next step of the 15 called tzafun. It's the finding of the hidden matzah. And we used to do this with the children. It keeps their curiosity until the end of what they consider a very long evening. And so we eat the tzafun. This is considered the dessert. And then we open the door to welcome Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet. And Elijah is a key character or figure in many of our literature, and Elijah is known to be the person who is going to usher in the time of the Mashiach, the Messianic age. And it's our hope every year, but especially at Passover time, to open the door and hope that Elijah comes to announce that we are on the verge of the Messianic age. And we sing Eliyahu Hanavi on page number 14. After the grace, after the meal, we have our third cup of wine on page 15. Don't want to shortchange you. We have hymns of praise on page 16, if you'd like to say those songs. Number 17, a lot of favorite songs at the end of the Seder. On page 18, we have the fourth cup of wine to round out all of the 15 steps. And I would like to end my portion with you on the last page, page 19. We always keep peace in our prayers, in our hearts, in our minds. And it's a good way to end our Seder on page 19 if you'd like to read that together with me. It's a prayer for peace. May it be your will, O Lord our God and God of our ancestors, to banish war and bloodshed from the world, and to establish great and wonderful peace in the world. And nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. All the inhabitants of the earth will know the truth, that we did not come into this world to argue and quarrel, heaven forbid, nor for hatred and jealousy and bloodshed, heaven forbid. We came into this world to know you, Eternal One, and so have mercy on us, and fulfill the promise that peace will come to the earth, and you will dwell without fear, and justice will lap upon the earth's shores like the waves, and mercy like a fierce river. And the world will be full of awe and knowledge and love and kindness. Amen. My wish for everyone is always foremost and more than anything else is good health. We have come through a trying year. We are beginning to see the light, and it pleases me to know that I'm now able to visit and see more and more of you, with wishing that we are able to physically be together next year for the Seder, and having a meaningful and enjoyable Pesach. I wish you Chag Sameach, a happy holiday, and looking forward to seeing you soon.